Surprise! This is actually the last video in the series. Now, there's very good reason for this. As our trip wound down and we were starting to get closer to the end of it, we actually met up with some family and took a slower end to our wonderful backpacking journey. But that doesn't mean we weren't on the move. So, from Rome, we actually took the train to Milan. Now, we were very short-lived in Milan because this was just a meeting point for us and some family. And so we did get to experience Milan's iconic train station, which was just so cool, and the architecture was amazing. And it's just nice to see the bustling of travel in Europe because it's just so common to take trains and to travel often. So that was a really nice close into our slower end of the trip. But we did have time to get a panino, and this was 10 out of 10. Prosciutto, arugula, parm. I also think there might have been artichokes on this. It was delicious, and I was glad we were able to grab one before we quickly headed from Milan over to Lake Como. Now, Lake Como, just iconic. I mean, the views are incredible. So many small towns, and where we were staying, we just had a wonderful view of the mountains and the sunset every single night, and we were right in town, which was awesome. Just absolutely loved our experience here. So the first night, we kind of just wandered around town and went and found some dinner. So this was called B-style Bellagio because we were in Bellagio, and this was a buckwheat pasta. I still think about it. I need to find what recipe, what region of Italy this is from. I don't know if it's native to Lake Como, but it was so hearty and so delicious. That was sage on top with some parm around. And then those were polenta cakes, also very good. And this was similar to a like manicotti, but it was stuffed with cheese and I think spinach. And I think that the actual like noodle that they used was different than a typical like manicotti. It wasn't like a crepe, perhaps, but similar shape. And then to end night one on Lake Como, we got some gelato. Now, I got dark chocolate, and then I think this was a stracciatella. I'm not sure what my second flavor was there. Either way, I mean, the shape, you can just see from it. It has that like bouncy texture that gelato has, and this was first of many over the next couple of days. The next day, we decided that we needed to explore the ferry system throughout Lake Como because not only were we staying very close to a ferry stop, which is something I highly recommend doing if you go to visit Lake Como, but that is also the main way to get around unless you want to drive through all of the windy hills around, Lake Como, which some of them you would still need to take a ferry to get between. So on this day, we decided to hit two different towns, the first being Menaggio. Now, it is just so nice to be even able to just take a ferry across the water. It's a beautiful ride, and it's really cool to be able to explore each of the different towns. Now, Menaggio, we decided that this was going to be a place that we walked around for a little bit and then went to go and get lunch. Now, we didn't have particular lunch plans on this day, so we kind of just went and scoped out what we could find, and I ended up getting these little slider type things. They were pretty much just like three mini panino type sandwiches, and honestly delicious. 10 out of 10, would recommend. And obviously we got some pizza to share, and also we were really on a Coke Zero kick, so that was kind of a nice little treat to have at lunch. But we couldn't not get gelato after our lunch because there is this shop that we saw, and I just feel like everyone was walking around eating it. I don't know if there just weren't that many in town or what the deal was, but we absolutely went and got some midday gelato on this particular day out in Lake Como. I mean, honestly, I just can't get over these views. It's truly like picturesque, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So what we got was the stracciatella and And then I also decided to get some pistachio because they actually had a plaque in the gelato shop that certified that their pistachios were from Bronte, which is where like a lot of pistachios come from. And I actually have like derivative in Bronte, like some of my family has come from there. So it felt very at home, at peace. And let me tell you, the pistachio flavor was 11 out of 10. I think it might be one of my favorite flavors, which is saying a lot because truly I love all gelato, but something about pistachio really just tickles my fancy. Then we hopped back onto the ferry and headed over to Varenna. Now, I think that Varenna might be a little bit more popular out of all of the towns to come and stay in or just like visit like we were doing as a day trip. That being said, it did mean that it was a little bit crowded on the day that we came. It didn't really taint our experience too much because a lot of what we were doing was just kind of walking along the water, walking through the town, and it also did have good shopping. So if you're looking for, picking up some souvenirs or looking to shop just in general, I think this is a good town for that. And honestly, all of the towns are going to have these picturesque views. So no matter what, it's a really nice day to be able to ride the ferry, explore the different towns. I also will say that you, yes, can take cars onto the ferry. You go and just ask at the ticket booth that's closest to your accommodations about what tickets you need, when they come, and whether you should take a fast or a slow ferry. The fast ferries obviously will get you places faster, and sometimes that can make a huge difference. You'll find that everyone's always helpful and accommodating, so don't worry about navigating the ferry system. Just make sure that you go in advance and kind of ask your questions and see when you need to get your tickets. Then when we came back to Bellagio, we went to dinner, and this restaurant I think was one of our favorites that we ate at in Bellagio. Spoiler alert, we did come here twice. So on the first night, we got this giant bowl of minestrone soup. It was delicious. We ended up sharing a bunch of it because it was just so big. I'm guessing it was intended for a meal, but we kind of got it as a starter. It was so good. And then we also got some bruschetta, just classic with olives and tomato and basil and a little olive oil. And then we also had like a cheese sampling, which was delicious. And for my main, I had a pesto pasta with a burrata on top, and it was so indulgent and silky, just delicious. Incredible meal. We really loved it here. I mean, it was just wonderful. A wonderful day in Lake Como. But for dessert, we decided we also wanted some flourless chocolate cake, some more gelato on the side, and then also this tiramisu that came in a flower pot. I mean, honestly, kind of iconic, and it was delicious. Now, I know tiramisu is a Roman dish, and if you want to see the best tiramisu that I had on this trip, then go check out my Rome video. But spoiler, I did come back to this restaurant and order this a second time. So if you're in Como, this was very, very good meal, and it was a great tiramisu. I was still impressed. The next day, we were up bright and early before the shops even opened for the day because we needed to catch an early ferry over to Menaggio, because in Menaggio is where we were going to catch a bus to the day trip we were headed on to. But we got there a little bit early to Menaggio, that is, and we decided to stop for some breakfast. So I had a cappuccino and an orange juice and some chocolate croissants. And then eventually we boarded a bus that was about an hour-long ride to...
Where are we?
We're on Lake Lugano.
Where are we though?
In Switzerland.
Oh, what city?
Lugano. Lugano, Switzerland. Now, Switzerland, as you know, if you've gone through this series with me, you know that I was just traveling through Switzerland and it's beautiful. I absolutely love the country, but I had never been to Lugano. Now, Lugano is very close to Lake Como, which is why it was easy for us to just catch a bus and head over for the day. So it's a super common day trip. And honestly, it's a beautiful city to visit. The one thing I will say about Lugano is that it's one of the most expensive cities in Switzerland. And I know Switzerland has a rap for being a bit of a more expensive country. So if you're going for the day, just expect lunch prices and things in general to be a little bit more pricey, but the bus ride there isn't that expensive. So it's a beautiful city to go and walk around. And you have watched some of my other videos, you know, you can always go to the grocery stores and get lunch if you don't want to go out to eat. But we did go out to eat, and I got a polenta and mushroom dish that was delicious. I love polenta, and I had been seeking it out on, seeing if I could find it on any menus, and I was happy to find it in Lugano. Then we also had some pizza and calzone, and it was awesome. It was a really great day. It's a beautiful city to wander around, and I highly recommend if you're spending a long time in Lake Como to take a day trip over to Switzerland and also stop at the grocery store while you're there. Now, on this day, we actually took a private boat tour of the lake, which was just such a cool way to experience Lake Como. Now, if this is something that you're interested in, there are so many options. We didn't book this until like the night before, so you can totally book it when you get there. If it's in more peak season, you might want to do a little bit more research because I'm sure things get more booked up considering we were there in a little bit of the off season. And I will say there are different price ranges for an activity like this, depending on how much of the lake you want to see and how long you want to be on the water. So don't completely nix this out as like an out of budget type of activity, because I feel like it's really worth it, especially because you can see all of these incredible properties, including some places where like movies were filmed or celebrities lived, or very historic or popular hotels that you just really can't see if you're on foot. It's also always good to do because, at least with our guide, they told us like some places you can go to go walk, or some towns that might be a little bit more worth a day trip or a ferry ride over, which we kind of didn't have as much insight into prior to this. Oh, also here you can see the train going, because there is a train on one side of the lake if you are taking a train into Lake Como, which is pretty cool. But after that, we went to get some lunch. Now, this place does fresh pasta. You can either stay or to go. And so we decided to take it to go, just take it back to our spot. I think about this pasta all the time. This is a lemon pasta with botarga, I think is how you say it. It's basically like a roe that they cure and dry, and then they shred it and they put these flakes on top. And it was like silky and lemony, so like kind of bright, but then it had this salty punch from the fish. It was incredible. I absolutely loved it. All of the pastas that everyone got for their meal, they were just so blown away by. I think has a lot to do with the fact that they make everything fresh and everything in-house. And you can obviously stay and eat it there. So if you're not staying in Bellagio and you don't want to take it back, you can stay. And they had tables outside too, which was kind of nice because it is beautiful in Como and the weather was great. So if you wanted to kind of just have your pasta and be outside, even though it's like more of a quick service place, you still could. Then for dinner, we went to a restaurant that was a little bit more by the water, a little further walk from town. And I got a typical Como dish. So this is perch. So perch is like a lake fish is what they called it. I think it's just one of the main fish that inhabit Lake Como. And so it was basically just fried in, I want to say oil. It could have been butter, but it had just like a very salty, like pan fried flavor. And they served it over a kind of, again, buttery tasting rice. Now, I think personally that if you don't like fish, if you're like, I sometimes have salmon, or like every once in a while I have cod, I don't think that this is a meal for you. But if you are a heavy seafood or heavy fish eater, you would really like trying this. And then obviously we ended the night with some pistachio gelato. And then I believe this was like a chocolate some. I don't know what kind of chocolate, but incredible pairing. I personally think pistachio might be my favorite flavor. Really loved it, and I just wish I had some gelato right now. Then the next day, we decided we better go and visit the namesake of where we are visiting, the city of Como. Now, Como is definitely the largest city on Lake Como, hence the name, but it is an awesome place to visit, especially for a day if you're not particularly staying in the city of Como. Like we were in Bellagio, so we decided to take a ferry from Bellagio over to Como. And it was awesome. There's so much to do here because it's a bit more metropolitan versus like kind of more village or like smaller towns, like Menaggio and Varenna and Bellagio. So that was cool because this was definitely able to be like filled for a full day. And it was really nice to be able to like walk around and get some good food. We had pizza with eggplant and cheese. I had a calzone. It was delicious. Just a random place that we kind of wandered into. I really, really liked it. And then we took the funicular up the mountain so that way we could have a beautiful view out over Lake Como. And it was so worth it. Now, one thing I will say about coming up here, if you are trying to catch a ferry or catch a train, the funicular only goes up and down so many times. And same with the ferries and trains. They only come so many times a day. So you really need to time it right. We had like a little bit of a close call being able to get down the mountain and then onto the ferry. But luckily we timed it well enough, unlike someone that we did see who was running through the line to get on the funicular because they were going to miss their train. So just make sure you plan it right, and it's worth it. The views are incredible. You're at like basically the highest point you can get on the lake. At least that's what I think the intention of the funicular is, to get you up super high. I will also say people live up here, which was kind of crazy to me, that they live at the top of this mountain and that their main transportation was to take this up and down the mountain. And like the views, breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. If you have a ton of time, you can have lunch up here, or you can have some coffee, or you could go down the funicular like we did and then squeeze in some gelato before we caught our ferry back. I think that one of those flavors actually might have been peanut butter, now that I remember it, because I feel like I was shocked to see peanut butter in Europe. It's more of an American thing, but both were delicious, and we were able to catch the sunset back in Bellagio before going to dinner again. And on this night, we went back to the restaurant that I said that we went to twice. And it was awesome because I needed to try this blueberry pasta. Truly so confusing. I had never had blueberry and pasta together, but it was delicious. And I did look it up. It seems like berries, or like blueberries, might be native to Como, or like into some of the towns around. So that was really cool to try. It was definitely unique, something I had never had before. And obviously we had to get the tiramisu again before we rode back the next day to the airport, because we were leaving Europe. And that was the end of this trip. I can't believe it. And this ends our trip throughout Italy. We went to Rome, we went to Naples, we went to Milan, we went to Lake Como. And if you missed my other videos in my 16-day backpacking trip series, then make sure you check them out after this video. I'll have them linked above and down below. I went to Paris, I went to Lyon, I went all throughout Switzerland, and I had a great time. So if you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing to my channel or giving this video a thumbs up, so that way we can just keep on growing and I can keep traveling around and sharing more videos just like this one. And that's all for now. I'll see you again soon. Bye!
C'è la luna in mezzo mare, mamma mia, mamma di dare. Figli mie, cutte dare, mamma mia, pensaci tu.